Well, hello folks and welcome back. Today we're going to begin the next major undertaking regarding the Yamaha YL1, and that is we're going to begin the process of restoring or reconditioning the carburetors, the two Mikuni carburetors. And these are the original carbs I pulled off the bike probably a year and a half ago now. Working on carburetors is probably one of the top three most intimidating activities I think folks get into when working on old Japanese motorcycles. The other two is typically wheel leasing, which I do speak to in video number 102 I did some months ago. So if you're interested in the process that I use to lace wheels, check out the video that you're going to see pop up here, the link, and wiring harness work or wiring in general seems to be intimidating for people. I just completed a multi-part, I think it was 5-part series on restoring the wiring for the YL1. It's videos 124 through 128, and it's also on its own playlist also that you'll see pop up here on a link. So if you're interested in either lacing of wheels or wiring, follow either one of those links and they'll take you into a little bit more detail. But back to the carburetors. I'm sure this is going to be a multi-part series. I don't know exactly how many episodes we're going to have involved with this next work that we're going to do here, but I'm going to begin with breaking down the carbs, the two carburetors. These are, I think I indicated, are Mikuni carburetors. And we'll work all the way through to the other end of cleaning them, trying to restore them back to their original look, and getting them operational and reinstalling them back on the bike. So this could be a number of videos in the series before we're all through. So let's go ahead and reset up at the bench here, and we'll get started on reviewing these carbs. Let's go ahead and get into the details of these two YL1 carburetors. These are Mikuni VM15 SC series carburetors, and I know that by looking up the specifications in the Yamaha service manual. You can see right there, VM15 SC. VM is a very common, very popular carburetor used on Japanese motorcycles. As far as I can tell, these carburetors are identical. Sometimes, and this is the intake side, so the mouth or the boot would fit over the mouth of the carburetors right here, and this is the engine side. And sometimes they will flip-flop the air jet adjustments. You can see right here my left thumb is, there's a air jet adjustment there, and there's one right here, and occasionally they will put that on the one carburetor on the outside here so you don't have to reach through from this side to get at it, from the left side in this case. But in any event, as far as I can tell, these carburetors are identical. I have not been able to find anything noteworthy that's different about them. If any of the viewers who have YL1s are aware of differences in the carburetors, let me know, but I believe for all practical purposes these are the same carburetors. You can see I've got everything ready to go here to begin disassembly. I have two magnetic trays labeled left and right, and as I take the carburetors apart I will separate the components, put the left parts here, the right parts here. I have a few screwdrivers lined up, ready to go. I have not taken these carbs apart to this point. They are just as I removed them from the bike 18 or so months ago. The caps here are free because I had to loosen those to get the throttle cables out when I removed them from the bike. So I did have those off just to get the cables out. The slides, which quite often, I think you can see in there, quite often are stuck and have to be persuaded to come out. These are reasonably free, as you can see, I think. I think I'm going to begin by removing this enricher bar, and this bar goes from the enricher lever here on the left and activates, well, some people would probably call it a choke. It's really not a choke. It's an enricher, and it enriches the fuel mix. Let's see if we can get that screw loose there and get this bar out like that. Put the screw back where it came from for now, so we can get the two carburetors separated. I have, in fact, taken some basic photos of the setup as it sits right now, so that later on when I go to put the carbs back together, I have some sense of how they came apart and what they look like. Let's just set the right one aside for now and begin here with the left one for no particular reason. So we'll take cap off and pull the slide out. That's a pretty typical appearance. We'll pull these 4 screws off and see how easy. This is a JIS screwdriver, by the way, Japanese Industrial Standard screwdriver. It's all I use on my Japanese bikes. My guess is someone over the years has probably been into these carburetors. It'd be pretty unusual for a bike of this age, pushing, what, 54, 55 years old, not to have someone having been into the carburetors. We'll see. I'll get these screws loose. They're a little bit on the gummy side. Might have to smack it a few times to with a soft hammer to loosen it up. Let's see what we have inside. Oh, sometimes those don't come off very easily. Only thing that's holding it right now is a gasket. Gasket will be replaced. And you can see there what it looks like. A very common scenario we have here in these two carburetors, or in this carburetor anyway. I have no idea how long it's been that this has been sitting, but it's been a while. So let's see if we can get that gasket off of there first. I'm going to use a flat-bladed X-Acto. See if I can just get that off in one piece. I don't destroy anything any more than I absolutely have to, because you never know if I have to make a pattern, use that for a pattern to make a new gasket. I don't think I will, but I don't know right now. That pin right here that holds the float ball is not going to come easily. I can see that right now. So what I think I'm going to do, take this bolt out right now. Just going to take a quick photo of that. see if I can get this enrichener out. Yeah, you can see right there. It's got a tab that's been bent up. What I'm going to do next, before I go much further, is I'm going to go ahead and soak this carburetor in the cleaning tank to get all the grunge off of it. It might help with this pin, this float pin right here. I think I'll soak them both overnight and then blow them off, make them a little more pleasant to work on. And it might help with this, like I said, that stuck float pivot. So I'm going to go ahead and drop both of these in the tank. I'm not going to soak these parts. I'm just going to soak this body and this one as it sits. And then we'll come back after they've been cleaned, at least initially. Well, it's been a little bit over 24 hours later, and I pulled the carb out of the cleaning tank along with its associated parts here earlier today. Mounted it up in this vise and hosed it down quite liberally with just some penetrating oil. Particularly, I focused on the pilot jet right here where my pinky is pointing and the pivot for the float. Particularly the pilot, it can be problematic. Those things can be a nightmare to get out. And we'll come back to that particular pilot in a minute. First thing I want to do though is show you the screwdriver I use to remove pilots. And I'm just going to cover that up so that the camera will focus where I want it to, not get confused. This is a typical pilot jet, low-speed jet that I took out of another carburetor. It's very similar to the one that's in these Yamaha carburetors, and it's brass. I think you can see there. This screwdriver I ground years ago. Specifically, it's just an inexpensive Craftsman, but it's been quite serviceable. And I ground it to fit specifically. See if I can get that there in focus for you. I hope that focuses. See how that fits into that. Let me get this straight. There we go. See how that fits into that screw, that jet, nice and square. Hope that comes through for you. So this is the screwdriver that I use, and the only screwdriver I typically use to attempt to remove jets. And it's been quite serviceable for me. And every so often I might have to touch up the tip a little bit with a file. You can see, I think there, it's ground flat on the end. So that's what we're going to use to try to get that jet out. However, before we get to that, the first thing I'm going to do is remove the float and a few other components here to get everything out of the way. Now, in terms of removing the float pin right here, these can also be a little bit challenging to get out sometimes, though not usually as challenging as the pilot jet. I just took a piece, again, some time ago, a piece of hex rod. This is brass. I wanted it out of brass so it's soft, and I just put a dimple in the end. I think you can see that right there, that dimple. And that dimple fits over the end of the pin, like that. I had this hex rod around from a machining project that I worked on a couple of years ago. In fact, it was that small steam engine that I built, and I think I did a video on that a couple of years ago now. If you're interested in that, it's out there. So I just take that dimple and put it over the end of the pin like that. Then I use a lightweight hammer. I don't use a heavy hammer. Make sure my carburetor is snugged up in here so it doesn't move. I'm taking the hammer to see if we can't tap that pin out now. No. Again, that's been lubricated earlier today with penetrating oil. Oh, that actually came quite easy. I wasn't expecting it to move quite that freely. Knock it back and forth in both directions just to make sure it's good and free. Working on carburetors is one of those things that requires finesse and being a little bit delicate. Now I'll just take a pair of forceps. See if I can grab the end of that and just pull it out. And there we've got the float and the pin out. Here we've got the float needle there. I'm going to take that out next. That's what, about an 8mm. I use typically 1/4" sockets for this kind of thing. It's a 1/4" drive. Can't get that out. You might hear my computer updating in the background, so you'll just have to bear with me on that. There's the fuel needle. I'm putting everything in that tray I started yesterday. Let's go ahead and get this this jet out right here. There's let me zoom in a little bit for you. There's a jet in a jet basically, and that looks like an 8mm, or rather 6mm, the top one, and the bottom one I know is an 8. I've worked on enough of these over the years. So I'm going to hold the bottom one with an 8mm wrench on the flats here, and then I'm going to remove the top one with a socket. Remember, this hasn't been apart in I don't know how long. And that freed up easily too. Now I can just go ahead and pull that jet out at the same time. And you can see the old fuel. I'm going to leave those together for now. Let's see what else we're going to do. Let's see if maybe we can get at that pilot jet right here. Now, I'll admit, these things can be absolute buggers to get out. And yes, I have had a few over the years that I have not been able to successfully get out. Most of them I can get out, but occasionally, I think I've had a handful. There's penetrating oil in here right now, as you can probably just see in a puddle of it, so I'm going to get that out so we can see what's going on down in there. And we'll wick it out a little bit here. And I think you can see the threads, or the slot rather. Someone has definitely been in here before, because you can see that slot in that pilot jet is a little bit mangled. Not bad, but a little bit. Make sure my screwdriver fits. I'm concerned about this this jet, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get my hot air gun, and I'm going to heat the body here around it with my hot air gun. and see if I can use heat to my advantage. I've had pretty good success with that in the past, so let's see if we can get that to work. So let me get myself set up with my hot air gun. Got my hot air gun ready to go. I never use an open flame for something like this, such as from a torch. I most definitely prefer just a hot air gun, and this gets very, very hot. I'm going to remove the carburetor from the jaws, the plastic jaws of the vise, and hold it in my hand. That's why I've got this big heavy leather glove on, because I'm going to support the carburetor like this and just heat it up. And it's going to get hot, really hot. So this will take a few minutes here. Okay, it's probably been 3 or 4 minutes, and that's good and hot. I'm really trying to heat the body, not the jet itself. And we'll see what we can do here in terms of persuading this to come out. Yeah, that's going to be a bugger. Yeah, it doesn't want to move on me. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back in the vise. And I'm going to hose it down again with penetrating oil and just leave it. And we might have to go through a couple of cycles of that, heating, soaking, cooling, soaking, cooling, etc. And see if we can't get that to free up here. Well, we've been through 3 or 4 heating and cooling cycles, and I've continued to try to use my little screwdriver a bit to get that jet out, and so far it's resisted all my attempts. So before I bugger up that screw any more than it already is, and again it was already a bit beat up when I started, you can see it there. I ground a fresh screwdriver. This is just an inexpensive screwdriver I've had around for many years, probably dates to the 70s. And I just did a little grinding there on the tip to clean it up to make it fit with the jet. See if we can get that for you in the picture. This is a little bit bigger screwdriver, and you can see, I think, how it fits right there. It's a little bit wider than my usual go-to screwdriver. I think you can see the difference in tips there, but this one clearly wasn't working. It had to be ground on the width so that it fit down into the tunnel there easily, but I wanted to capture as much of that screw as possible. I've not tried using this yet, by the way. Just ground it a few minutes ago. I was waiting for this to completely cool off. I'm trying to use expansion and contraction to my benefit here. That is, heating it up really hot, work a little bit with this screwdriver. Didn't work. Let it cool down completely. Heat, cool. So far nothing's worked. So I'm going to do a couple more cycles here. I'm going to add a little bit more penetrating oil here. Not sure that's helping much, to be honest with you, but it certainly can't hurt. And now I'm going to heat this again thoroughly, the boss right here, and probably a couple more times, and then try using this screwdriver. If that doesn't work, then we're going to have to resort to more drastic options, which we'll talk about later if we get there. So I'm going to go ahead and heat and cool this a few times, and I'll bring you back. Alright, we've been through several heating and cooling cycles, so what I'm going to do now is use the new screwdriver and use the top of the vise here as a surface plate to support the body of the carburetor. And I know you can't see what I'm doing, so you're going to have to just bear with me as I get this screwdriver in there and see if I can't get that out. And it is turning. Reluctantly, but it is coming out. There, I think you can see the jet. It'll be good and hot. Right there. I think you can see it. So, voila, we got that out. And you can see that's probably smoking a little bit from the heat of the hot air gun. Okay, that was probably going to be the worst part we're going to have to deal with on this carburetor. Let me change my setup here a little bit, and we'll come back and see about getting the starter circuit out. I've got to bend over a locking tab that you see right there. I'm going to have to get that out of the way so I can pull this assembly out. And pull that jet out right there, that air screw, pull that out, and then we'll have this pretty well broken. Well, the carburetor body is cooled so I can handle it. I've got everything reset up here, you can see in the vise. What we're going to do next is attempt to remove this starter plunger. And in order to do that, there's a locking tab right here that I'll give you a little closer shot of that here. I think you can see it right there. Right there's that locking tab. That's got to be bent down and opened up so that I can spin this 12mm nut off. So in order to do that, and these can be a little bit tricky, I'm going to do the best I can to preserve that tab. I don't want to have to try to replace it or make another. I'm going to just take, on my first attempt, I'm going to take this flat bladed X-Acto style knife. You can see right there, blade. This is well used. It's not a new or particularly sharp one. But as long as I can get it underneath that locking tab right there, I think you can see that. And just using my little hammer, see if I can't get that underneath there enough to open that up a little bit. Of course, that blade is quite thin right there. And my primary goal right now is just to open that space up a little bit between the tab and the brass nut. Right there, which worked. Now I've got 3 small screwdrivers, and I'm going to start with the smallest one and see if I can just start working that locking tab up. An alternative would be to take an old screwdriver, something like this one that I ground for the pilot jet, and just grind a thinner tip on it. That would be an option if you got an old screwdriver around. Switch to a different one here to do the same thing. And I'm trying to just get that back enough and use my other screwdriver here and see if I can't just work that back. With minimal damage. I'm just trying to finesse that tab down a bit to clear that brass nut, which I think I was successful with. Now I need to use a 12mm wrench. See if I can get that wrench on there. Yes, it does appear to be 12mm. And this is where a thinner profile wrench this way. I've got some thin profile wrenches. I'm not sure where they're at. I think they're up in the basement. I got a little workshop in my basement in a house. I don't use it much anymore now that I have my shop here. But that's what you really want, is a thin profile. And you can grind a wrench to make your own. I think I can, there we go. Might be able to turn that by hand now. It's a little awkward trying to keep your head out of the way of the camera here. See if this comes out. Might have to finesse this out too a little bit also. And there's the starter plunger assembly right there. The actuating mechanism, the handle here, this I might end up taking this apart and replating all of this. Very possible I'll have to do that. We've got the starter plunger out. It's really an enrichener is what it is. It's not a choke. A lot of people call it a choke, and it's not. It's an enrichener. And now we have this air screw right here. I think that's about the only thing we've got left to remove. Now, if I wanted to, well, I'll do it just to demonstrate and see how far out this was from stock. I'm not sure what it was, the factory setting. I'd have to look it up, but let's see where this one was at. So, half, 1, 1.5, about 1 3/4. Not sure how that aligned with the factory settings. It doesn't make any difference because I'll set it back to the factory settings anyway when I'm should be a spring in there. Yeah, there is a spring right there. Let's see if I can see the spring right there. If I can get that out. So there's the spring right there. All right, at this point, I think this is, I believe, the left carburetor. I think we've got it all broken down. What I'm going to do now with this one, I'm just going to set it aside and take apart the other carburetor. This is the right one. we're going to do the same thing. Again, I've got a dish for it. You see a little of the fluid for the cleaning it drained out. We'll break this one down too. So this will be a duplicate procedure to the one you just saw. I might come back when I get to the pilot jet. That's the one I had so much trouble getting off on the first one. So you can see how that one goes. Other than that, everything else is the same. It's an identical process. See how that one, yeah. The one you just saw. So I'll bring you back when we get to the pilot jet. I won't record everything you've just seen that's duplicate. Thought I would show you the inside of this. This is the right carburetor. I might have misspoken. The first one was the left. I don't recall. I might have got those backwards, but you can see the inside of it. Similar condition to the other one. Obviously, it was stored with fuel in it. So we'll go ahead and get that pin out. Well, we're up to the pilot jet, and I think you can see there, that one does not look like it's been tampered with. It's in very good condition. In fact, it's almost pristine. So I think I'm going to use this screwdriver on this one, see how it fits first. Seems to fit. In fact, that one will come right out. Look at that. I don't know if you can see that. Let me back up a little bit. This one is coming right out. I'll switch to my smaller screwdriver here. This one didn't fight me at all. Give you a little bit different perspective here. I think you can see it right there. It's coming right out. That's treat. This one has not been out before. It's pristine. Look at that. It's quite unusual. Not sure why they would have been in this one, the first one, and not this particular carburetor, but who knows. That's about half. One and a half. That's pretty close to 2, I would say. Thereabouts. 1 3/4 to 2. Well, that one went a whole lot quicker than the other one did. Now we've got to do the same thing with this locking tab right there that we did a few minutes ago. And there's the second starter circuit. Well, the hard part's behind us now, and that is breaking them down, especially those little pesky air jets right there, pilot jets rather, I should say. But we've got both carburetors broken down pretty much all the way. Now what I'm going to do is continue with the cleaning of them one at a time. I will take them back over to the parts tank, put them all the components in a basket that I have, and I'll wash them and let them soak a bit, and then eventually most of the parts will go into the ultrasonic cleaner. I'll tank them, especially the carburetor body here. I want to make sure that's clean. And probably go through the soda blast process that I've demonstrated before. This part here, which is was plated originally, this arm for the enricher circuit, probably going to have to take apart and replate it. Get it back a little bit. That would be sandblasted or media blasted with glass beads more appropriately. And I might end up bead blasting the inside of these two float bowl chambers. I'll check the floats for buoyancy, make sure they don't leak. Clean them up, of course. So I'll bring you back another point and show you where I'm at when I get a little bit further down the road on these carbs. I think that's going to be it for this video, the breaking down of the two YL1 carburetors. I hope you found it of interest. Any comments, questions, concerns, drop me a note. And as usual, thanks for watching.